Welcome back to the Mint Door podcast, where we unlock the door to whole person well-being. We're your hosts. I'm Laura.
And I'm Karen.
And today we have a remarkable guest joining us, Greg Wood, expert facilitator and conversation connoisseur.
Now, Greg has degrees in Clinical Counselling Psychology, Performance and Development, plus over 15 years of experience as a mental health professional. Greg has the perfect combination of skills and qualifications to help dentists and other dental professionals conquer their challenges and reach their well-being goals.
In addition to his professional career, Greg brings a wealth of knowledge from his hobbies, such as travel, motorcycling, tennis, dill, and glamping. Plus, he loves good conversations. So unlock powerful conversations that will unleash powerful well-being tools for everyone involved. I just can't wait for this conversation, Karen, because, one of the reasons that we came together through the Mint Door was because of our conversations and because of our love of bringing genuine, authentic conversations to our clients and everyone in dentistry.
Yeah, this is going to be good. So without further ado, let's open the door and welcome Greg Wood, expert facilitator and conversation connoisseur, to the Mint Door podcast as we talk it out.
Well, welcome to the Mint Door, Talk It Out. Today we're talking it out with Greg Wood. Greg, thank you so much for taking some time to be with us today. We are super excited for this conversation.
So much.
Greg, can you give us a bit of insight and maybe an explanation into what's the difference between a conversation that's disguised as a monologue and a conversation that matters?
Yes. So conversations are certainly my thing. So I am a counselor in private practice, and when I am in a good conversation with someone, we both feel connected. And I think both people in the conversation feel as though that they matter and their perspective matters. And it's not just a matter of me waiting for a moment when I can say what it is that I want to say or feel that I'm achieving my agenda, and vice versa. So I am on a mission in my practice to end that pandemic, if you will, of monologues masquerading as conversations. And many of us think that we're having a good conversation when we say what it is that we think we want to say. And that's not necessarily the same thing as being involved in and engaged in a conversation. Does that kind of get at that question? It's a great question, something that I feel really passionate about.
Do you have an example that you could use to illustrate when somebody is having a conversation that matters?
Oh boy.
Well, what does that look like?
I think what it looks like is people are doing an equal amount of speaking and listening. Mm-hmm. There's balance when it comes to asking about what the other person is saying or what the other person is interested in, versus really focusing on sort of what I'm trying to get across versus what you're trying to get across. You can see it if you know what to watch for. If you're observing a conversation and what it really feels is a bit of like a tennis match, if you will. You're sort of, observing one side of the conversation, the person sort of saying and doing their thing, and then they lob it over to the other side, and the person is saying and they're doing their thing, and it's sort of going back and forth. Versus if the conversation is more effective, it really is more around checking into making sure that I'm understanding, for example, just giving a little extra space if I'm not sure if someone is finished what it is that they're saying. Asking a question, whether it be open-ended or closed-ended, just showing interest in what the other person is saying, as opposed to, no, I'm just going to say what I'm going to say, and I don't really care what you feel about that.
Yeah, that's a really great illustration, because as you're saying that, I'm imagine, and I've seen these conversations happen before, where it's almost people are having two different conversations.
Yeah.
Because they each have their own agenda, and they're not listening to what the other person is reporting.
And what's really interesting is, in moments like that, it's not always clear. And maybe you've experienced this. Lord knows I have, and I think many of us have. It's not always clear when we aren't talking about the same thing. We think we are, but we aren't. And then we maybe go away, and whether there were action items or whether there's something that I thought I heard you say, or vice versa. And then we circle back after the fact and say, wait a minute, that's not what you said. That's not what we, but it might have been what either, you said, or I said, or one of us heard, and because we weren't connected at the time. I think another sign of a conversation that matters, as opposed to a series of monologues, is dang, I just lost the. I'm gonna have to circle back to that, because I had a point there to make and I just forgot about it.
That's all right. That happens to me all the time. Karen, right?
Yeah, I'm nodding in agreement for myself too. Wasn't blaming you, Laura.
Oh no, it's interesting as you're describing these conversations that matter, and I think, as I'm listening, I'm feeling times when I've been in conversations that matter versus times that I've been in monologues. And there's definitely a feeling that you feel. What are some of the tangible benefits of having these conversations that matter?
Well, I think certainly one tangible benefit is there's a sense of buy-in to what's going to happen next. If I'm having a conversation that doesn't matter, if I'm feeling I'm just being spoken to, much of what my own self-talk could be sounding like is, you don't care. What's important to me doesn't matter to you. Therefore, I'm going to kind of tune out, and I might go through the motions, but I'm not here with you. Like I'm not buying into whatever it is that you're saying. I'm likely not going to maybe follow up on anything that you're recommending to me, because it feels like I don't matter. But if I'm having a conversation that matters, sort of some of the outcomes will be the opposite, right? So I'll be much more likely to be open to what it is that you're saying, be receptive to any recommendations that you might have, because I feel that you have my best interests at heart as opposed to yours. And I remembered the point that I was trying to make earlier, and it sort of relates to this as well. When people are having conversations that matter, they're both demonstrating no small amount of curiosity toward the other person, their ideas, their perspectives, because being curious, it actually causes us to listen differently. So rather than listening for those moments in the conversation where I know what I want to say and I'm going to say it here, instead, we're listening with the intention of understanding what the other person's perspective or point or need is. And if we can demonstrate in a conversation that matters that the other person's perspective, point, experience matters to us, then they're much more likely to feel connected and much more likely to be bought into the conversation in the moment and whatever the outcomes or recommendations might be.
I love that curiosity piece of it. That's a great, like, just to remind ourselves before conversations to turn up our knob on curiosity. And this is something that Karen and I can identify with as dentists in dental practices, having conversations day in and day out. How do you feel that this is relevant in the world of dentistry?
You're asking me? Yeah. Well, having been a patient in the world of dentistry for my whole life, I think that there's a lot of trust that's involved when it comes to being a patient of dentistry. So, whether it's working with hygienists that I haven't worked with before, and maybe the hygienist asks me what my preferences are in terms of kinds of treatment or sort of options. What if they don't ask me? If I'm sitting here a little bit dreading, remembering what happened last time or the time before when something happened and it was painful, or because I really don't like the sound, or I don't like a certain taste or something like that. And all those things, I think, are revealed in conversation. If conversations don't happen, then the dentist or the team member of the office can't know, because just because you go through and do a certain thing time after time after time after time, I'm still a unique individual. Like, I'm still someone who, like, I have my own hopes and my own preferences and my own fears. And if you don't explore those with me in conversation, then it's, again, I feel as though that as a patient, I don't matter. It's more about, you need to do your thing, which I of course appreciate. I'm here for professional care, but I'm still, there's a whole person here, not just whatever it is that's presenting in terms of dental issues or needs.
Mm-hmm. It's that what you're describing is really compassionate communication between the clinician and their patient in that instance. And that's something that Laura and I are very much passionate about in our practice wellness programs when we go into practices, and through our virtual program as well, that this thing of compassionate communication. So yeah, we love providing our listeners with something that they can go away with, something that they can practice today or tomorrow as they're starting to learn about the art of having conversations that matter. What's one simple skill or technique or something that you could suggest that where they can start with their practice?
Yeah. So it's simple and it's complex at the same time, but it's around the area of empathy. So conceptually, what empathy really is having an awareness of and an appreciation for someone else's perspective, opinion, experience. Not to be confused with sympathy, because empathy really is recognizing this whole, their perspective is their perspective, and it's not our position to sort of look at their perspective through our own lens, right? We kind of got to remove our own lens first before we look through someone else's. And that can show up as a skill in conversation as well, empathizing with the person that we're in conversation with. And what empathizing really accomplishes is showing a person in that moment that their experience matters. So it could be, so in my case, a great question to ask me from a dentistry perspective is, do I prefer hand scaling or do I prefer the cavitron? I prefer hand scaling by far, because I can't stand that sound, right? But very rarely, if ever, has anyone at the dentist office asked me that question. Asking me that question is an example of empathizing with me in a conversation, because it's not about whether or not one is easier than the other from the dentist or the hygienist perspective, because I suspect one is easier than the other. But it's more showing interest in what works for me, what is important to me in that moment. So being tuned into the other person's experience, being tuned into what their hopes are, what it is they're hoping to avoid. Any way that you do that in conversation is an example of empathizing in that conversation. It's a very, very effective thing to do. Another thing that you could just do is ask someone how they feel about being at the office today. And that could be a really good question to ask for a new patient. And it also could be a really good question to ask for, even for a patient that you've had for a long time, because sometimes when we know someone well, when we have a lot of experience or history with someone, one of the things that we can do is get a little bit casual. We can get a little bit assumptive with that person and think, oh, Greg's again, he's back. He's always cool with, whatever it is that I do. So I'm not going to ask him about it. I'm not going to ask him how he's, oh, great. So come on, sit down, open your mouth. And that might be the day that I'm having a concern about something. And so it's always important to actively look for opportunities to empathize within each conversation that you have.
Active empathy.
Active empathy.
And it's not like, it's not a one and done thing either. Like, it's sort of, some people approach conversations in a very sort of scripted or systematic way, right? So you sit down with someone, you ask them, hello, how are you? Tick the box. Why isn't the weather nice today? Tick the box. So you're sort of going through it, and then you feel like, okay, well, I've done all of that now. Now I'm just going to do whatever it is that I want to do. People know that as well. People can sense when you are not paying attention to them that way, when you're just kind of going about your business. So not thinking of empathizing in conversation as a one and done thing. It's something that you can always do.
That's excellent advice. And I suppose even throughout the appointment, not just at the beginning, but throughout. And
sure. I mean, why not ask what was your favorite moment today? And maybe the answer might be, well, right now that I'm done. Like, I mean, it could be that. It could be, gosh, I really liked the flavor of that rinse. Like, that was new. Or I really loved how when you were cleaning this particular part of my mouth, that went really well today. I was really happy. But so why not ask that? Whether or not you genuinely are interested in the answer isn't always the point. Just asking the question conveys that you're interested enough to just check in with the person in that moment, and it doesn't take that much time.
This is it really makes me excited for the authenticity of experience that could be achieved with conversations that matter. And not just in the dental office, but if we get good at this in our work, we're probably then spilling into outside of work, with our families, with our communities. So it really could be a revolution in how we communicate.
Yeah, conversations do happen. Well, I was just about to say, conversations happen everywhere, all around us, all the time. Sometimes they do. Sometimes it's more the sequential monologue thing, but really, like, they are a red thread that runs through every moment of every day. And there's always an opportunity to connect in a different way through conversation, every conversation that we have.
That's fantastic. So if you've piqued the curiosity of one of our listeners and they think, I want to learn more, I want to explore how to bring more conversations that matter into my life, do you have some sort of way of teaching this or letting people in on these gifts of yours?
Sure. Yeah. One of the things that I do is I do training on conversation skills. I've created a framework that importantly is very, very skills based. There are 12 skills within my framework, which can and perhaps should be practiced on a regular basis. And it's not a mastery thing. Like, there's no such thing as a perfect conversation, and every conversation is unique. So my approach is not really in terms of scripting or looking for the ideal way to have a conversation every single time. Instead, what I do is I train a number of skills that can be used at any moment in any conversation. And so that's one way that I work with individuals and groups to develop these conversation skills and apply them in situations for each particular group that I work with.
Very cool. That sounds like something that I think a lot of people would love to explore and enhance, because it feels good when you have a good conversation. It's not even just, about the fact that it's elevating the conversation, but it does enhance your well-being, I think, as well, and that of the person that you're having the conversation with. So
it's very much it's two-sided as well, because if you as a dentist, I think, are having a conversation or trying to have a conversation with someone who is not comfortable with you, that will be a difficult experience for you as well. And whether or not you know what's going on or why, it's stressful. And conversely, if we are able to break through some of those hesitations, through some of those barriers, and have a conversation that is more connecting, more of a conversation that matters, it's a win-win-win for everyone. So it's something that I'm really passionate about. I really appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation with you both today, and would love to support you in any way that I can going forward.
Oh, fantastic. How would somebody find you? What's the easiest way to get a hold of you if they're curious about exploring more about conversations that matter?
Yeah, best way to track me down is through my website. So www.portasole, so portasole.ca. And you can send me a message through the website, and I'll be happy to respond and get back in touch with you.
Fantastic. Is that an Italian word?
It is. Yeah. From the first part is from the verb portare, which means to carry or to bring, and the last part of the word is sole, for the sun. So carry the sun, be the light.
It's beautiful. Fantastic. We'll make sure that the link to that and all your information is in the show notes below. So that will be wonderful. Thank you so much for spending some time talking with. This was a beautiful conversation. I enjoyed it immensely. So, and you piqued my curiosity to explore more of bringing more conversations that matter into my life. So thank you, Greg, for being with us today. And
it was my pleasure. And I know how conversations are important for the two of you in particular, given how it was conversations that brought you together and keep you together and keep you doing the amazing things you do for your audience. So thanks for having me today. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. You bet. Okay. Yeah. Well, we hope you found some encouragement as our listeners today from Greg, and please reach out to him and elevate your conversations. We adore you, our listeners, and so we will be back soon with another episode. But in the meantime, enjoy your next conversation. Cheers.
Bye.